Yes. Okay. Thank you for bearing with us, everyone. This is why we're doing this very important research on brain health, so we can figure out how to keep ourselves together. Welcome to the weekly webinar. As you have figured out, today we're doing a special session and we're doing in person and on Zoom to accommodate people in lots of ways that we can share information. And we have had a time getting ourselves together so we can be seen and heard. And we think we've got it. So I will officially get us started. Please mute yourselves. Thank you. And please feel free to use the chat feature. I will watch that while you present. And then you are welcome to enable the closed caption button at the bottom of your screen if you need that. We are recording and we'll have a video up on YouTube later this afternoon. So those are all the usual housekeeping notes. I am supremely happy to welcome back Laura Janusik, who is here for the third time, and we were just chatting before we got started. I'm pretty sure that other than me, Laura is the only three-time speaker, three-peat, on the webinar so far. So that should tell you how much we value her opinion and her knowledge and her insight, which she will share with us today. And Dr. Janusik is a lovely, wonderful person who has all kinds of communication tips to share. She's a communication coach, a consultant, a speaker, and a researcher. And she specializes in listening. And isn't that something we could all stand to do a bit better? She's a dementia educator. We love those folks around here. And after 5 years as a caregiver for her mother, Dr. Janusik now helps caregivers build more meaningful relationships with loved ones who are experiencing cognitive decline. And she's got a Master of Business Administration and a PhD in communication. This is a woman who has a doctoral degree in communication. So really, listen to what she says. And she is going to equip us with practical research-based strategies to improve communications. And if all of that wasn't enough to convince you, her work is cited in Forbes, Harvard Business Review, the Wall Street Journal, NPR, and the KU Weekly Webinar. Just had to throw that little plug in. So we are going to turn the camera around a little bit so that she can see you on Zoom and Zoom can see her and the people in the room can see. And also, just so you know, the people in the room have snacks. And not only do they have snacks, they have Halloween themed snacks, ghosts and bats and pumpkins and dark chocolate, which we all know is good for the brain. And we have rainbow brains and we have hairbrushes with mirrors and we have fans because it's warm in here. We have all kinds of, and water. So just so you know, whenever we do another one of these in person, just know what you get when you come in and see us face to face. All right, Dr. Janusik, all yours. We just need, oh, thank you. Can you slide that back this way so I can see it? Then we will officially be official. We're gonna do this, share, and we're gonna put it on present mode. And I am gonna step out of the way. There you go. Okay, and I'll move this around.
Okay. Thank you, Kelly. It's great to be back. And I'm happy to know that I am the other 3P. So it's wonderful to be here. How many of you, by a show of hand, are currently caregivers? Caregivers, yeah. Welcome to the club that no one ever asked to join, right? No one wants to be in this club, but you find yourself in the club because somebody else tosses you into it. There are reasons that this information is so meaningful to me. And as Kelly said, my PhD is in communication with a specialty in listening and a specialty in brain research as well. So I'll tell you how that plays into what I'm going to share with you today. But first, I want to tell you what I know about you, caregivers, anybody who has ever been a caregiver. It's one of the hardest jobs you will ever have. And I see a lot of it coming. It is so true. And just by showing up regular, you're doing a good job. And you're here today because you don't want to just do a good job. You want to do a better job. You want to do a great job. You're searching for information. And I definitely have information and tips for you today that will make you a little bit better as a caregiver. This is my why. My mom's name was Lucille at birth. However, she had an older sister named Ruthie who always wanted a younger sister named Susie. So when Ruthie was pushing her around in the baby carriage, people would say, "Oh, is this your sister? What's her name?" And she would always say Susie. So my mom grew up as a Susie, even though her formal name is Lucille. Mom got diagnosed with cognitive decline about 10 years ago. And I did what any good daughter would do at that time. I ignored it. She was my mom. She had figured everything out her whole life. So I thought she would figure this out too. Fast forward to that time, about 5 years, the pandemic was active. My mom ended up getting COVID, and COVID really exacerbated her dementia. He lived in Ohio. It was at that point that I recognized that there was no way that she was going to be able to take care of herself anymore. Okay, I will get to the mic a little bit more. Maybe not there though. Okay, so I will just step right here. So I realized she couldn't live by herself anymore, and she had 5 children. I was the only remaining one. So she had lost 4 children and 2 husbands. So I realized that I needed to step in, and I, you know, mm, my mom was pretty stubborn, and I imagine many of you have parents who are pretty stubborn as well. So here was the trick that I used with my mom. I learned about geriatric care managers who are professionals in geriatric. And if you're interested in this, you can email me and I'll be happy to send you the website because they have a find place. So I found a geriatric care manager in Ohio and I said to my mom, "Look, I've never dealt with this before and you've never dealt with this before. So let's go to the experts. This woman is a nurse. She'll come in and she'll do some tests with you. And then she'll write a report, and whatever she recommends is what we should do." And my mom has a lot of authority, had a lot of authority with medical professionals. So she agreed. And I knew that the geriatric care manager was going to say she shouldn't live alone anymore. So that was safe for me. And that's exactly what happened. She came, she did a number of the different tests, and she recommended assisted living. My mom moved into assisted living, and I got much more involved in her care. I would fly to Ohio once a month for between 3 and 5 days every month to be with her. And then she, after about 4 years, fell and broke her hip. And when that happens, she can't be in assisted living anymore. So we had to find a care center for her. Center, and we were able to find a fantastic care center for her. Absolutely fantastic. Unfortunately, I lost her in about April of this year. But as anticipatory grief all throughout the way. I am thrilled that she gave me the opportunity to gain the knowledge that I needed to gain in order to help other people. Not only did it help us, but I kind of silently call what I do now Susie's Project, because we really were able to develop a very meaningful relationship. So, why is my passion project to help caregivers? As you know, I'm a communication professor, and I deal in a lot of different areas of communication. The most fulfilling one that I have right now is communication with people with cognitive decline. And that's because of the research that I have found, particularly the brain research and the communication theory research that then matches it. So, communication in caregiving is very frustrating. And it's frustrating because we use certain rules to communicate on a daily basis. We learn them implicitly from other people, but no one ever names what those rules are. Once the brain starts changing with dementia or cognitive decline, they don't abide by those rules anymore. So we blame them. We blame them. We accuse them of lying. We accuse them of withholding information. We accuse them of trying to make our lives miserable or harder than they need to be. But the reality is they don't know the rules anymore and they can't use those rules anymore. So we as the caregivers have to really accommodate what we do. That's why caregiving is so frustrating when it comes to communication. I recognize that by communicating the same way I always had with my mom, I was actually hurting more than helping because I too fell into that pattern of accusing her of lying to me or withholding information from me. And I thought, there's got to be more to this. And I thought, I have a PhD in communication with a specialty in listening and brain research. If I can't figure out how to communicate to my mother with my mother, who could? Who could, right? So I thought, I better get back to the books and figure this out. And so, luckily, I had spent 2 years studying cognitive psychology. I went and looked at a lot of the dementia brain research. One of the things that I love doing is reading journal articles and then putting them in layperson's terms. And I was able to then figure out why it's so difficult for us to communicate with others with cognitive decline. So today I'm going to give you the one skill that you gotta master first. It's certainly not the only one, but it is the most important one to do first, I think. And that's because memory doesn't work like it used to. There are two major frustrations that I'm going to cover today, one being long term memory, as you see here. We all know that long term memory doesn't work like it used to because, as the caregiver, we get frustrated that the person we're caring for can't remember things. One of the first things that we know that go are names or proper nouns for things. And the reason for that is because there's only one correct answer. My name is Laura. It will never be anything but Laura unless I get a nickname, right? My name is Laura. So there is only one right answer to that question for my mother, right? Who am I? Who am I standing in front of you? Just one answer, Laura. And if you can't find that answer, and we know from the research that that's the first thing to go, those proper nouns, then she's feeling frustrated and I'm feeling hurt because how could she not remember my name when she gave birth to me, right? And she raised me and she's known me for over 50 years. How could she not remember that? And you'll understand a little bit more as I go further. For example, this is a depiction of a normal brain and then an Alzheimer brain. And the white matter is on the outside. What do you notice about the picture on the right? Say that again. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the sultry is small. It's starting to cave in on itself, right? And you can see that the brain is decaying. And that's what's happening with cognitive decline. As a matter of fact, this is startling, but over the course of the disease, the brain size reduces from 100% to about a third of its size. So it can get to be 33%. Why is that important? Because in the brain, that's where we have all of our neural pathways. That's where we can go and find information in our long term memory. But if we can't get there anymore because that part of the brain was affected, then we just can't get there anymore. Now, this is one of the major reasons why everyone's cognitive decline journey is different because the brain does not decay at the same pace in this disease, nor the same way depending upon the person. So perhaps if you had a brain injury, like when I remember 5 years old, I dove into a pool, but I forgot to put my hands here hit my head and they had to drag me out and revive me, so I definitely probably had a concussion when I was 5 years old. That affected my brain when I was 5 years old, and I've carried that along with me. So lots of people have things like that that happen to them, which means that my brain is automatically different than your brain. And what decays is just really up to chance. We can't decide. And I put myself in my mother's shoes, and she used to know that she couldn't remember things. And when she couldn't remember things, she would always hit her head kind of violently sometimes. And I felt so bad for her, and I assured her that my job right now was to be her memory for as much as I could. Um, but they recognize oftentimes that they can't find the words. So we see that quite frequently as one of the first things that gives us an indication that something is going on. So cognitive decline affects the long-term memory, and I like to use an analogy for this. The long-term memory is like our library, and we all have a library, and each of those books in the library represents an experience we've had, a moment that we can remember, all of the things that we've ever seen or learned. They're all in there. All of those experiences are in our long-term memory. And I don't know about you, I haven't been diagnosed yet, uh, but there are books in my library that I can't retrieve right now, right? Like, who was my second grade teacher? I don't remember. It may have been Mrs. Peduto, but I'm not sure, right? I'm not sure. So we all have these long-term memories. What happens over the course of cognitive decline, though, our books are checked out of the library and never returned. And that's because of the brain decay or the brain collapsing in on itself. So people who have cognitive decline have less and less books in their library as the disease progresses. And towards the moderate to more severe end of the disease, you can see that there are only a few books left in the library, which helps explain why people might ask the same questions over and over again or say the same things over and over again, because that's all they have access to. Okay, so the size of our personal library shrinks and is consistent with our brain decline. Now, the second frustration with memory doesn't work like it used to deals with the processing time, or what used to be known as short-term memory. In 1975, they changed that term to working memory, but a lot of people still use short-term memory. So if I say working memory or short-term memory, that's going to be the same thing. So what is short-term memory? You're hearing this information from me for the first time. So you actually have to take all of these words and you have to go into your long-term memory to get definitions for these words. And you have to pull them out somewhere, and then you have to combine them with all of the other words that I'm saying and the pictures that I'm showing. And that's all done in our prefrontal cortex. So the short-term memory is making new meaning of things. The short-term memory is also affected with cognitive decline. And the way that I like to explain this is through a car analogy, which is kind of funny because I'm really not into cars myself. But the way current cars are made, current cars in 2025 are made so that you get in, you don't even have a key anymore. You generally press a button, right? And you can go right away. You don't have to warm them up at all. Many of you are chronologically gifted like I am, so you're going to remember this car, the 1960s or 70s station wagon. I grew up again in Ohio, so when 5 kids crawled into the station wagon with mom and dad turned on the car, in the winter, what did we have to do? Wait. We had to wait till the car warmed up. We couldn't go anywhere because if dad put the car in reverse, it would stall. And then you'd have to go through that whole process again, right? So this is what's happening to someone with cognitive decline. Their pace at being able to do this processing is more like these old station wagons. It's going to take them longer to drive to the library because they have to warm up the car, and the car can't go anywhere near as fast as a car goes today. When they get to the library might not have the book that they wanted, and then they have to drive home. And so you can see both the long-term memory and the short-term memory is affected through cognitive decline. So why is this important, and what can caregivers do? Well, this next piece of research that I found blew me away. There's so many pieces of research that blew me away, but this one definitely is among the top 3. So what's the most important skill for a caregiver to do? What do we do knowing that it's taking them longer to get to the library and the library might not have the book? There's little known 2-minute research that was found through the Alzheimer's Association. And what that means is it can take up to 2 minutes for someone with cognitive decline to get into their car, to drive to the library, to look for the book, and to drive back. That means when we ask them a question, it can take up to 2 minutes for them to respond. What I know from communication, no one waits 2 minutes. Okay, 2 minutes is, a horrendously long time, because the communication research will tell you in the United States that when we're asked a question, we generally respond within a half a second. I don't know about you, but my clock doesn't even time a half a second. That means that we're getting those automatic responses. But in cognitive decline, nothing is automatic anymore. They have to actually think about the process. They actually have to walk themselves through the process to get into the car, to go to the library, to come back. It would be much like us having to think about every movement that we do when we walk while trying to think about something else. We couldn't do it, right? We just couldn't do that. So it can take up to 2 minutes. What I know about people in the United States, half a second is how long it usually takes to respond to a question, and 3 seconds is when it gets really uncomfortable for people. So what happens at 3 seconds when the person hasn't responded? What do? Yeah, we re-ask the question. You know what? That restarts the clock. That sets the clock back to 0. So we really need to learn. We need to learn some patience here. So we are trying to help them when we re-ask the question, or sometimes we get frustrated and we say, oh, never mind, that's not important anyway. They were already on their way to the library, but now they know that you don't care anymore. And so they're going to pick up that you don't care anymore. So the best skill is long silence while still looking interested. And that's one of the things that I definitely learned with my mom. At first, I thought, oh, I could multitask. I could ask her the question. I could wait 2 minutes, check a message on my phone, and then get back to her. Once she saw me interested in my phone, she checked out. She's like, it's too exhausting trying to drive to the library to look for the book. So if you're not interested in my response, I'm not even gonna go anymore. And so we have to look interested. I will tell you that at least 85% of the time to the end, my mom would respond on task, meaning, I would ask a question and the answer wouldn't come out of left field. She would respond on topic, even if it took up to 2 minutes for that. And so I would just sit there and smile. And We don't keep direct eye contact because that's just really weird for an extended period of time, right? I'm doing that to you right now, and you're like, quit it, Laura, quit it. But we generally break eye contact and we might look behind and then we might come back. But we want to keep our eyes in the vicinity of the person's face. So when the person is ready to respond, we're ready to have that eye contact again. So the number one skill that I want you to walk outside today with is this extended silence. I do workshops on this, and in workshops, I generally will pair people up and have them practice it. I can promise you 100% of the time people come back and say, that was really awkward. That was really hard. Since we're both on Zoom today and we're live today, I'm not going to break you up like that, but we're going to practice the strategy. And I'm only going to do this for 30 seconds with you. So that's only 25% of the time we really have to wait. Here's what we're going to do. I want you to pretend that you're asking me this question. What was the best part of your day? What was the best part of your day? And, oh, I don't have my phone with me. Does somebody have a phone? Can you time for me? Okay. So after somebody here asks me that question, I want all of you here and all of you on Zoom to look at me like you're interested in what I have to say. Okay? Do you want to ask me the question? No, you can ask me that question. The best part of my day is having you visit with me right now. So that was a long time, wasn't it? It felt like forever. And until you master the skill, it will feel like forever. But I cannot tell you how valuable it is, because what we are still doing is treating them like the person they've always been, because they do have access to some of those answers. And we're showing them that we're interested in what they have to say. We are helping them feel heard and understood. And that is a beautiful gift to be able to give to people. So, your conversations, you will still be able to have them. They will take a lot longer. You won't ask anywhere near as many questions as you ask now. And how you ask the questions become really important as well. Because of that short-term memory thing, oftentimes we'll ask, what did you have for breakfast? I don't even remember what I had for breakfast, right? Why am I asking my mom what she had for breakfast? So you don't want to ask a question that would challenge their short-term memory, right? Because there's a right answer there and we would make them find that out. But the way that I worded this question makes it an open-ended question, and it's also an emotional question, because as the brain degrades, the hypothalamus, which is the center core part right above the brainstem, that's where our emotions are, and that's the last part of the brain to go if it ever goes. And so they still have emotions, which is why you oftentimes see them react with emotions as opposed to logic. All of the logical part is our prefrontal cortex and all of that other sulci and the gray matter up there. So the number one skill, a long pause, a really long pause. So let me hear from three people. You can give me an aha that you've had from today, a frustration, maybe a question. Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, that's why it happened. Exactly. So somebody here just shared that she and her family went to visit her mom in assisted living. They had dinner together. They would ask questions. Her mom wouldn't answer, so they would shift topics. And when her mom did answer, they were a few topics down the line, and now she realizes that she can still participate. She just needs more time to be able to drive to the library to get the answer and to bring it back, which is beautiful, isn't it? And it's going to be so hard for you and your siblings to do this. I had to learn to bite my tongue so I wouldn't talk. That's how I trained myself to do this in the beginning. Okay, great.
One is you tell the person ahead of time, pause and give them time to answer.
That's a great question. And yes, you can say, particularly if you haven't been doing this and they're a little bit gun shy around you now, what you can say is, hey, I just learned that I need to give you a little bit more time to answer a question. So I'm not going to expect an answer right away. Or you can say something like, Mom, I've got a question for you, and I know this is going to be a hard one. So I want you to take as long as you need to answer it, right? So you're giving them permission to have this long pause. And what's important is you don't interrupt them during it. Kelly, is there another question in the chat?
Another question. Agitated about it.
Yeah. So losing our driving privileges for many people with cognitive decline, that is a really hard place because in essence, it means the loss of independence. And so before you get to that step, if you can make it somebody else's decision, like the doctor's decision, that's always better because then it doesn't come back on you. Um, but the best thing to do, remember, dad's really frustrated about this, is to validate him and say, yeah, dad, this sucks. I would be really mad if I couldn't drive too. I know it's best for other people and we're not going to kill anybody, but I really get that it hurts. And allow as much independence as you can. So I don't know if this particular person lives at home or lives in a facility, but figuring out other ways that they can have independence then softens a little bit of that. And also consider things like ride sharing, Uber and things like that, because they can still go places. Um, they just aren't safe to drive there or back. So great Christmas presents really are like Uber gift certificates for parents. Is there another question?
The next question is about.
Oh, cognitive decline and hearing loss. Yeah, this is a twofer and this is really hard. Um, First, my mom lost 3 different sets of hearing aids. So after the third set, I finally just said, no more, no more. We used Costco hearing aids. They seemed to work the best for her and they were the most affordable, but still expensive. Oh, and by the way, I don't know if you know this or not, but with Costco hearing aids, you get the second pair free. I don't know if they still do that, but they don't necessarily tell you that. So when I went back to place an order again, they're like, "Oh no, we'll give you the second pair free." Like, yes. Of course, she lost them again, but at least we had them for a little while. So with hearing loss, there are a couple things that we can do. You'll notice that they probably start reading lips. So slow down your speaking and enunciate your words more so they can read your lips better. That means you're always facing them. Sometimes I would also write a question down on a piece of paper and give that question to my mom because she could still read and understand the question if she couldn't hear the question. And checking for, do you understand what I'm saying? Right? Do you understand what I'm saying? Because there's that pride thing there that continues because that's one of the emotions, right? And we don't want people to know that our hearing isn't great, but when our hearing isn't great, we can't understand the question, so we can't participate correctly in the conversation. More questions from in here? Yeah. Oh. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it depends on the decay of the short-term memory because sometimes the short-term memory might go faster than the long-term memory. Yeah, yeah. So perhaps writing down the question might be easier for him. Yeah. And Kelly, you said you had another one?
Hang on. Here's one. Someone, a high school friend who lives in Arkansas, they have not been in touch for mid.
Yeah. Recommend something or anything. Yeah, when we have people who are in different places with this, which is hard, I would say first is having that honest conversation, right? I'm noticing some things. We have been friends for a long, long time. Can I share with you what I'm noticing about our conversations? And so asking permission for that, and then offering resources from a distance that you might have. Who could drive them to the doctors? Who are their friends there? Can you make contact with their friends there? But that is a tough one at a distance for sure. Or you can do like I did with my mom and just went to visit once a month. Well, there are so many there are so many influences to that question that there isn't a that is correct. Yeah, that is absolutely correct. And I'll give you an example for that. I don't like mustard, but I like making deviled eggs and I use mustard and deviled eggs. So in the summer, whenever I go to a barbecue or anything, the thing that I always take are deviled eggs, which means that every summer I have to go buy mustard, right? So I'll go into the grocery store, I'll say, where's your mustard? They'll tell me what aisle to go to. As soon as I go there and pick up the mustard, I forget, right? Because I'm not going to buy mustard for another year and they might move it in the next year, right? So there's a lot of information that we just toss out right away. And sometimes we overwrite the information that's in there or we add to the information that's in there. A struggle for many people in this room. If you're parents and you grew up celebrating Christmas, hope there are no children on the line. But the first time you realized maybe Santa Claus wasn't real, but your parents were telling you he was, and then you have children and you have to have that conversation with your spouse. Are we going to lie to our child and tell them Santa Claus is real? Or do we tell them the truth that Santa Claus is not real? So we do have, actually, it's a wonderful term, I think, in dementia, which is called compassionate lying. And I definitely am a strong advocate for compassionate lying. I promised my mom that I would tell her the truth about everything that I thought she needed to know at least once. And then if I felt like it would hurt her or make her sad or frustrated to hear the information again, I wouldn't tell her the truth again. And so she lost two brothers, both of her brothers, during the last year of her disease. And I told her once each time about them and then never mentioned that again, even if she mentioned them in the context of they're probably still alive. I did not correct her. So I could go on with questions all day, but I'm not going to do that, right? Because we have to draw this to a close. I just want to check in with you to see if we have any more there. Practitioner, cognitive decline, my geriatric physician, or yeah. Okay, so how do I help caregivers? And I want to let you know that I do have a workshop, and the workshop, you can see the title up there, the Caregiver Starter Kit Workshop, a 3-part workshop to learn what no one tells you about communication and dementia. And it's 3 90-minute sessions. They are all recorded on Zoom, so it's all virtual. And if you miss one, you can then watch it on Zoom. I have another one that's coming up in November. It begins November 3rd, and this time I'm going to try it in the evening, so it'll be 6 to 7:30 in the evening, just for 3 Mondays. Typically, I've been doing them in the mornings. I also perform communication coaching for families because sometimes families get really frustrated because somebody thinks this is best, the other person thinks this is best. So sometimes I will do communication coaching for families. I also do daily posts on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. And primarily they're dedicated to cognitive decline. On Facebook, you'll find it under my business name primarily, which is Listening to Change. So I have a business page there. And I also have a business page on LinkedIn, but I put the same content on my business and my personal page. So you can see different videos there or different quotes there or different short blogs. You can also sign up for my weekly email for cognitive decline caregivers. And so I have a list in here for those of you who are not here. Kelly, I'm not sure how we move the people. Yeah, can we move the people to the other side so they may be able to take a picture of the QR code? Yes. And if you take a picture of that QR code, it will take you directly to the landing page where you put in your name and your email, and that automatically enters you into my email list. Or if you want, you can go to this tiny URL if you don't know how to take the picture of the QR code, or you can just email me at laura@listeningtochange.com and say, put me on your email list, and I will do that. If you send me a note today or tomorrow, I'll know that that has to do with caregivers. Yeah, I mean, you did look. Yeah. Yeah, and you're not going to poke them for the answer, but yeah, you can definitely touch them. I would hold my mom's hand under the table a lot when we were out at a meal. And it always surprised her when she felt my hand. It just really surprised her. But she liked it, so she would hold my hand back. But I've got lots of information to share, so I certainly hope to see you on my email list and potentially in a workshop in the future. Thank you.
Back over here. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being with us. I was thinking back to the days when I learned how to type on a typewriter, and trying to real fast keep up with you in the chat, to answer those questions. And I hope we got all the questions answered. If we didn't, blame it on me and not our presenter. She is working pretty hard to get everything in the room taken care of. Someone had a really great comment to me in the chat, which is that if anybody watches this back on the recording, they will not be able to see the chat and the questions and answers. So I do have a way of providing the transcript in the chat, so I can do that. I can take names off of it, so the only name that you know is in the chat is me, and I don't care if you know that I said something. So I'll make the transcript available if that's something you want. And if anybody's watching this in the future and you want the chat transcript, send email to myalliance@kumc.edu and we'll make that available. I'm going to stop sharing for just a moment, and tell you again, thanks for being with us today. We like to do the weekly webinars in person when we can. We probably will not do another, actually, we definitely will not do another one this year because we've already scheduled out the rest of the year. But in 2026, after the threats of winter is over, we will schedule some more simultaneous in-person and Zoom webinars. And I feel pretty confident when I say we'll probably have Laura come back and do another one because she's the expert now. You've done them in person more than anybody else, so we know what buttons to press on the computer now to make sure the sound and the audio and the video and everything work. And we definitely will keep in mind the feedback about being able to hear the questions. So stay tuned to that. Next week, we are going to have Dr. Robert Newton, who is a PhD researcher at the Pennington Biomedical Research Institute in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And wow, how did we swing that? Well, some of you saw the movie this summer, Mama Joe, that I was in. And Mama Joe went to Louisiana this summer in August, and I went to see the movie in Louisiana. And on the panel, Dr. Robert Newton from Baton Rouge was one of my co-speakers. And I twisted his arm and said, can you please come talk on our weekly webinar about your research? So he'll be with us next Thursday. I'm really excited to see him again. Although it will not be in person because he's in Louisiana and I will be actually in New York, but that's a story for another time. But we'll be here on the webinar. And then coming up after that, we've got a provider who talks about, she does some visiting to adult day facilities, and she's going to talk about activities to do with your loved one, whether they're at a facility or at home or wherever they might be. And she's really a fun person. And then in November, a lot of you may be wondering what happened to our annual research breakfast, our research update breakfast we typically have in November. And we bring about 500 of you together and we feed you breakfast and we tell you all the things we've learned in the last year. Well, unfortunately, that's not something we're able to do this year for lots of reasons, a lot of them financial. But we want you to know what we've learned in a year. So we have invited Dr. Jeff Burns to speak with us on November 6th. So he'll be on Zoom presenting everything we've learned in the last year and taking questions. And then on November 13th, Dr. Russell Sverdlow, our director, will be on the weekly webinar, providing updates and answering questions. So that will kick off November, which is Alzheimer's Awareness Month. If you want just 1 month, I mean, really, it's always Alzheimer's Awareness Month, as far as we're concerned. And then I'm not supposed to be biased and say that I have a favorite presenter. And Laura, you're definitely up there. But I have to tell you who my most favorite presenter is someone who has never presented on the webinar before, and she's going to on Thursday, November 20th, and she is in the room with us, and I want her to come up here. Come on up, presenter. The people in the room already know. You're about to find out. I'm so excited that the presenter for us on Thursday, November 20th, she will look familiar to some of you. I don't know if you can see her now, but this is my mother, Peggy G. You've seen her in the audience on the weekly webinar, and she has agreed to be our speaker on November 20th, and she's going to talk about how she was the best caregiver for my grandmother. And she is currently caring for her very dear friend, which is different from caring for your mother. And she's going to talk about that. She's going to give us some advice, and she might probably even repeat some things that Laura told us today. So
I take notes.
she took notes. So we've got a really fun November plan. And did I say this? It will be her birthday on November 20th, and this is her birthday present to us, to be our weekly webinar speaker. There's a birthday twin in the room. What? November 20th is the best day of the year, apparently.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. So we'll put all that in the newsletter. But we've got some great, great speakers coming up to take us through the rest of 2025, if you can believe that. So thanks for being here on Zoom, everybody. Thanks for being here in the room. Please take these snacks with you. And we'll see you back next week, October 23rd. Thanks, everybody.